Your nephew totaled your new $85,000 truck. But don't worry, we told the police you were driving. My brother laughed over the phone. Baum added, protect him. Be a good uncle. I smiled, kept my voice soft. Got it. Then I handed my dashcam footage directly to the state trooper. When the police arrived at my brother's house, the call came in at 6:43 in the evening on a Thursday in March of 2025. I was still in my work boots, still had drywall dust on my forearms, and the particular kind of tired in my shoulders that only comes from swinging a framing hammer for 9 hours straight. I had pulled my 2022 Ram 3/4-ton truck into the driveway of my rental house on Albemarle Street in Akron, Ohio, and I was sitting there for just a minute with the engine off, the way I sometimes did, not thinking about anything, just letting the day settle. My phone lit up on the passenger seat. My brother, Denny. I almost didn't answer. Denny called when he needed something. That had been the pattern for 41 years, which was exactly how long I had been alive. But I answered, Jonas. His voice had that particular quality it always got when he was trying to sound casual and failing at it. Loose. Too easy. Hey, man. So, listen. I waited. Okay, so here's the thing. He laughed once, short and sharp. Your nephew totaled your new truck. But don't worry, we told the police you were driving. I sat very still in the dark cab of my neighbor Carl Weston's 2019 Honda Civic, which I had borrowed that morning to leave the Ram at the job site. Don't worry, Denny said again. Cody's fine, little shaken up, but we handled it. I said, you handled it. Yeah, man. We told the trooper that you'd lent Cody the truck, and then we realized that looked bad, so we just said you were the one driving. It's simple. The truck's insured in your name anyway. You just say you were driving, there's no issue with Cody's license, and everybody walks away clean. Then my mother's voice came onto the line. He had her on speaker. Of course he did. Jonas. Her voice was soft and warm, in the way it only ever got when she needed something from me. Protect him. Be a good uncle. Cody is only 19 years old. One mistake can ruin a boy's whole life. I looked out through the windshield at the streetlight on Albemarle. A moth was circling it, going around and around the same bright point like it had forgotten there was anywhere else to go. I smiled. I kept my voice soft and even. Got it. I said. I understand. I hung up the phone. Then I reached over to the glove box and I took out the small black dash cam I had removed from my Ram that morning. I had taken it with me out of habit. 23 years in construction teaches you that documentation is the only thing that ever tells the truth. I drove to the scene of the accident. But before I tell you what I found there, I need to tell you what kind of man my brother Denny is and what kind of family I've been carrying for the better part of 4 decades. My father was Raymond Elias Bowen. He died at 58 years old from a heart attack on a job site in Cleveland, Ohio on a February morning in 2011. I was working that same site as a framing carpenter. I was 27 years old. I watched the paramedics work on him for 11 minutes in the mud beside a half-framed residential build. I held his hand when they stopped. Dad was a concrete finisher for 31 years. He worked for Dalton Masonry out of Parma, Ohio, and he made decent money, but never quite enough, spending most of his life splitting what was left between the house payment and Denny's various problems. Denny was 4 years older than me. He was charming in the way some men are charming, meaning he could make you feel like the only person in the room when he needed something, and like a piece of furniture the moment the transaction was complete. He had worked maybe 12 years out of the past 40 in any sustained way. He had a talent for starting businesses and an equal talent for watching them fail, always with a story about why it was someone else's fault. His son, Cody, was 19 years old and had grown up watching his father treat consequences as optional. My mother, Elaine Bowen, 70 years old, retired dental receptionist, lived in a 2-bedroom house in Stowe, Ohio, that I had paid to have the roof replaced on in 2023 at a cost of $14,200 tash cash. By that point, I had learned that anything involving my family and a bank account created paperwork that always ended up pointing back at me. The shape of our family was simple. I was the one who paid for things. Denny was the one who received things. My mother was the one who made sure this arrangement felt like love. I had bought the Ram in January of 2025. A Ram 1500 Longhorn, new off the lot at Classic Ram in Akron. Sticker price $87,400. I had put $20,000 down in cash and financed the rest. It was the first brand new vehicle I had ever owned in my life. I was 41 years old and I had worked construction since I was 18, and I had decided I had earned exactly one thing for myself that was mine and nobody else's. Cody had come to my job site that Thursday morning at around 7:15 with a story about his car being in the shop and needing a ride to a job interview in Cuyahoga Falls. He was wearing a button-down shirt and seemed earnest and a little nervous. And he was my brother's son, so I handed him the spare key to the Ram and told him to have it back before 5. What I had and what I did not think about until later was the dash cam. It was a Vantru N4 front, rear, and interior channels. It recorded continuously and saved the last 48 hours to a loop, and it also triggered on any impact event and saved that footage in a locked file that could not be overwritten. When I removed the unit that morning, the SD card stayed inside it, which meant everything Cody had done with my truck was on that card. I drove to the accident site. The state trooper on scene was Trooper William Estep, badge number 773, Ohio State Highway Patrol, approximately 35 years old, with a patient expression that seemed to be his natural setting. He was standing beside my Ram, which had been driven into a concrete barrier on the Route 8 on-ramp near Cuyahoga Falls. The front end was not quite destroyed, but it was close. The airbags had deployed. Cody had been taken to the hospital with a minor concussion and 2 cracked ribs. Trooper Estep looked at me when I pulled up in Carl's Civic. "Are you Jonas Bowen?" "I am." "You're the registered owner of this vehicle." "I am." "Can you tell me where you were when this accident occurred?" I looked at the Ram. I thought about $14,000 on my mother's roof. I thought about Patricia Durr, a nurse at Summa Health, who had ended things with me in 2022 after telling me, with the clarity nurses developed from years of delivering hard news, that I had given so much of myself away to people who didn't value it, that there was not enough of me left to sustain a relationship. I looked at Trooper Estep. "I was not driving that vehicle today," I said. "My nephew, Cody Bowen, 19 years old, was driving it. I loaned it to him this morning. I have dash cam footage of the entire day beginning at 7:15. Trooper Estep was quiet for a moment. "We received a report that you were the driver." "I know," I said. "My brother, Dennis Bowen, called me 45 minutes ago and informed me he had told you I was the driver. He asked me to confirm that story." I told him I understood. Then I drove here. I held out the Vantru N4. Trooper Estep looked at it. Then he looked at me. "That's your dash cam. Front, rear, and interior. It's been recording since January. Impact events saved to a locked file that cannot be overwritten." Estep took the unit carefully, the way men in his profession handle things that have suddenly become evidence. "You understand your brother and your mother may face charges for filing a false police report." I looked at the damaged front end of my Ram. "I understand," I said. I drove back to Albemarle Street and I sat at my kitchen table and I drank a cup of coffee and I waited. My phone buzzed at 9:20. Denny. I did not answer. 9:22. My mother. I did not answer. At 9:45, Trooper Estep called me directly. He told me the footage confirmed I had not been in the vehicle. After 7:18, he told me the footage showed Cody at the wheel at the time of impact. He told me there was additional footage from the interior camera of Cody in a parking lot in Cuyahoga Falls at approximately 2 in the afternoon that the department would be reviewing for unrelated reasons he was not at liberty to discuss. I said, "Thank you, Trooper Estep." I put my phone face down on the table and finished my coffee. The calls kept coming for the next 4 days. My Aunt Sylvia, 67 years old, retired nurse from Youngstown, called to tell me I had broken up the family over a truck. I answered because she deserved a straight answer. "Jonas, your mother is devastated. Cody could end up with a record over a truck. He's being investigated for something that happened in that parking lot," I said. "Whatever it is, it was captured on my camera while he was driving my vehicle. The police would have found it anyway. Silence on her end. What was in the parking lot? She asked. I don't know yet. But I think Denny does. That was a guess. It turned out to be correct. What the interior dashcam footage showed was that Cody had met two men in the parking lot of a strip mall in Cuyahoga Falls at 2:11 in the afternoon. The exchange lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. It was a drug transaction, a significant one. Cody was not a casual user. He was moving product, had been for about a year. Denny knew when Cody crashed the Ram and police got involved, Denny's first instinct had not been to protect Cody from a traffic charge. His first instinct had been to protect Cody from what would happen if the police reviewed the dashcam. So he had tried to get me to hand over a false statement that would give him grounds to argue the camera evidence was tainted. It did not work. Cody was charged in Summit County on March 22nd of 2025 with drug trafficking, filing a false accident report as an accessory, and operating a motor vehicle without the owner's consent. He pled guilty to reduced charges in August and was sentenced to 2 years of probation, mandatory treatment, and 200 hours of community service. Dennis Bowen and Elaine Bowen were each charged with filing a false police report. Denny pled no contest and was fined $2,500. My mother's charge was dismissed because the prosecutor determined she had repeated information given to her by Denny without independent knowledge that it was false. The judge gave her a formal reprimand. My mother did not speak to me for 4 months. The Ram was a total loss. The insurance payout was $61,000. I had paid $87,400. I had paid $87,400 in the transaction in practical terms. That is what it cost me. I want to be precise about that because the people in my family spent a great deal of energy insisting I had done something monstrous for the sake of a truck. I am a 41-year-old construction worker in Akron. I do not have money to lose. I never have. But that is not why I handed Trooper Estep the dashcam. There is a man named Gerald Kosicki, 64 years old, owner of Kosicki Construction, where I have worked since I was 24. Gerald is a wide, quiet man with hands like paving stones and a habit of arriving before anyone and staying after everyone leaves. He gave me my first foreman position in 2013. He has a saying he has repeated to me in various forms over 17 years. He says, the site doesn't care what you meant to do. It only cares what you did. He says it about construction, about the difference between a corner that looks cut and a corner that is cut. But I have spent years thinking about the ways it applies to everything else. My brother meant to protect his son. I understand that. What he did was ask me to lie to a state trooper to cover for a drug transaction. And when I imagine what that means in 5 years, in 10, I see Cody in the same parking lot with the same men because nobody ever made it stop. I see my mother still believing love means protecting people from consequences. I see myself at 50, still the one absorbing the losses. I handed Trooper Estep the dashcam because I was done being the site where other people's bad decisions landed. My mother called me in July of 2025. It was a Sunday morning at 8:05. I was sitting on the back steps of my rental house with coffee, watching a cardinal work through the bird feeder my neighbor, Marge Callahan, had given me before she moved to assisted living. She did not apologize immediately. She asked how I was. I told her I was fine. She asked about work. Then she was quiet, and when she spoke again, her voice was different. Smaller. Cody is in the program. He's been sober for 61 days. I'm glad, I said. And I was. He asked me to tell you he's sorry. About the truck. About all of it. He can tell me himself when he's ready. Another silence. I didn't know about the drugs, she said. Jonas, I need you to know that. I believe you. But I did ask you to cover for him, and that was wrong. I set down my coffee cup on the step beside me. I've been thinking, she said slowly, about the things I asked you to absorb over the years. For the family. I told myself it was because you were strong enough, that it was a compliment. But what it really was, Jonas, is that I knew you wouldn't leave. Denny would leave. He has over and over, but you never did, and I used that. This was the most honest thing my mother had said to me in 41 years. I did not know what to do with it, so I just held it. I'm not asking you to forget it, she said. I just wanted to say it out loud before I got too old and didn't. Thank you, I said. Are you angry with me? I thought about Patricia Durr. I thought about $26,000. You. I thought about my father's hand in the mud in Cleveland in February of 2011, and how I had held it, and how I had never once asked anyone to acknowledge what that had cost me. I said. I'm not anymore. Not much. We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important. The roof, her garden, a neighbor's dog that barked too early. Ordinary things. Gerald Kosicki stopped me at the end of a shift in September, a Tuesday evening, when most of the crew had already gone. Heard about the thing with your brother, he said. Heard you did it straight. I nodded. That's hard, with family. It was, I said. He nodded once. We stood in the way men on job sites sometimes stand, not needing to fill the silence. You're going to run the Talmadge finish phase, he said. Full foreman. Not acting, not temporary. Pay raise, effective the 1st of October. He told me the number. It came to approximately $14,500 a year over what I was making, which is, I noticed, almost exactly what I had spent on my mother's roof in 2023. I noticed that, and then I let it go. Thank you, Gerald, I said. He clapped my shoulder once and walked to his truck. I bought a new truck in May of 2025. Not another Ram. Used. 2020 Ford F-250. 72,000 miles. White. From a private seller in Stowe for $28,000 cash. I had it inspected by a mechanic named Tony Abreu at Midas before I bought it. He told me the frame was solid, and I was getting a fair deal. I installed a new Vantru N4 the day I brought it home. The dashcam from the Ram had been returned to me after the investigation closed. I put the SD card in a small plastic case in the toolbox in my bedroom closet. The same toolbox that holds my father's concrete trowel, the one he used for 26 years, the wooden handle worn smooth in exactly the shape of his grip. I do not look at the footage. I do not need to, but knowing it is there matters to me in a way I have not entirely worked out. Cody called me in October of 2025, 90 days sober. His voice was quieter than it had been, less arranged, the way people's voices get when they stop performing and start just talking. Uncle Jonas, I'm sorry about the truck. I'm sorry about what my dad asked you to do. I know you are. I'm glad you called. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Were you scared? When you went to the trooper, were you scared of what would happen to us? I thought about the moth on the streetlight, going around and around the same bright point. Yes, I said, but I was more scared of what would happen to all of us if I didn't. He was quiet for a moment. I think I'm starting to understand that. 90 days is real, I said. That's yours. Nobody takes that from you. I told him that if he ever wanted to talk about the trades, about the kind of honest physical work that builds something you can stand in front of and say you made that, I was available for that conversation. He said he might take me up on it. He hasn't yet, but I think he will. What I keep coming back to is my father's trowel. The way the handle wore into the shape of his hand over 26 years of daily work. Tools develop memory. They carry the physical record of the person who used them. My father was not a complicated man. He worked in concrete and he paid his bills and he died at 58 in the mud beside a half-framed house. He did not leave me money or formal wisdom. He left me the trowel. And he left me the understanding, absorbed by watching him for 27 years, that the work itself is the record, that what you build and how you build it, and whether you hold the line or cut the corner, is the only autobiography that matters. The site doesn't care what you meant to do. I had meant, for most of my life, to take care of my family. And I had done that. But I had confused taking care of people with absorbing their consequences, and those are not the same thing. You cannot build something sound on a foundation that keeps shifting to accommodate whoever is leaning on it. The trowel knows that. Concrete knows that. It sets and it holds, and it does not renegotiate after the fact. I know it now. At 41 years old, in a used Ford F-250 with a dashcam on the windshield, driving home to Albemarle Street after work I am proud of, past the stretch of highway where I made the clearest decision of my adult life. Now I want to ask you something. If someone you loved handed you a situation and said, "Protect me, just this once, just say what I need you to say," and you knew in your bones that saying it would not protect them but only delay the reckoning, could you hold the line? Could you hand over the footage even knowing what it would cost? And here is the deeper question. How many times have you been the one who absorbs things, the one leaned on because everyone knows you will hold? And when did you last ask yourself whether what they call your strength might actually be something handed to you so early and so quietly that you never got to decide whether to carry it? What is in your toolbox that still holds the shape of something true, waiting for you to pick it back up?